Okay, I think everybody's had ample time to get over, and the time has arrived, actually, and we're past time. Appreciate all of you who have held over to attend the meeting today. Let me remind all of you that we are broadcasting over the internet, and we welcome those people that are joining us from out there. And today we have 4 bills before us that we were going to consider. The first one is House Bill 1460 by Representative Hill, and I'll call on Representative Hill if she will give us an explanation of the bill.
Good afternoon. I'll try to be as brief as possible given the time of day we are in now. This past summer they had the stakeholders committee meeting where they put the trawlers, the casters, commercial, recreational, bait, and dock holders together to work out some of their differences in the shrimping. I took that list that came from that meeting and we came up with this bill. One of the things that was agreed to was the fact that they could now use the modified nets, which were taken away in 27.4.13, line 21 on page 2. Said title is further amended by repealing Code Section 27.4.13 relating to size and construction requirements of cast nets. They also took away the size of the nets, so you'll notice in the above Section 2 where anything that pertained to size was struck through. Recreational shrimpers were allowed a 1/2-inch net so that they didn't have to go out and buy new nets in order to continue fishing. I'm trying to think what some of the other limitations were. The amount of shrimp that could be caught by commercial casters was raised from 48 to 150 quarts, and then as of December the 1st, that drops back to 75 quarts again. They changed the definition of recreational shrimping to, they changed the name, so that's why you'll see recreational is struck on line 14, because when they redefined it, they left that word out, so it had to be removed wherever it was in this bill. Trying to zero in on some of the things that would be of interest. We've done about 4 substitutes on this bill, trying to make everybody happy on it, and I understand there were some that were concerned and wanted to make the trying to think what I'm trying to say. They wanted to make sure that recreational shrimpers realized that they could not sell their shrimp, and therefore they wanted to make it a point of letting them know how they would be what the disciplinary action would be in regard to that. But if a recreational shrimper sells his shrimp, that makes him, that's commercial, and he's not licensed to commercial, so that is already against the law. And that is already dealt with in, I don't know, what law was that dealt with in, where they, about the, if the recreational shrimper sells shrimp. It's
current code provides it shall be unlawful for any person to sell for human consumption shrimp taken by a recreational food shrimp casting.
so it would already be against the law. Does anyone have any questions that's read this over that has any concerns?
We'll get around that in just a minute. Basically, what I think what you've done here is come up with a bill that was a result of the stakeholders meeting that was held during last year, and you tried to basically, even though I think we talked about this earlier in a committee meeting, Spud Woodward, the deputy director brought us a program on that, actually. Are all y'all familiar with the process that we went through, or they went through? This bill is a result of the findings that they came up with, even though it was not adopted by the advisory council who they were working for. So I think Representative Hill and others felt like this was probably something that needed to move forward, which basically allows for the modifications of the cast net for both recreational and commercial cast netters. There's some other things in there I think that benefit the whole shrimp industry, but basically that's what it does. It doesn't limit the nets, but it allows you to modify the nets with the duct tape or whatever. It sets the limits. It sets the limits higher from 60 quarts to 150 quarts, I believe it is, on commercial, and leaves the recreational guys at 48 quarts. Is any questions from the committee first, and then I'll ask Spud if you have anything to add to it. I know that y'all were not. This is not a bill that y'all have proposed to us. It's a bill that is actually being brought by the legislature as a result of what's done. But would you like to make a few comments?
Yes.
If you will.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. On behalf of the department, I'd like to thank you for taking into consideration the results of a public involvement process that we coordinated. I came to you earlier in the session and gave you the details of that process. We think it was a very productive process, one that we think is the best outcome that can be made out of a very divisive situation, and one that's been a persistent source of conflict. This bill accurately reflects the list of recommendations that came out of that process and out of our shrimp advisory panel, and it is our opinion that that nothing in the bill is contrary to the wise use and conservation of our shrimp resource. So, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have about the technical aspects of the bill.
Have you read the substitute?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. To the best of my knowledge, the only thing that's different is I don't think that the committee recommended lower than a 5/8 inch mesh for the recreational, but in this bill it allows for 1/2 inch. Is that the only change that you know of?
That's one of the most, I guess, significant changes. One other deviation is the Shrimp Advisory Panel had recommended November 30 as the ending date for recreational casting, but the bill as presented to the committee is basically status quo. It gives the commissioner the authority to act based on the most current data, and we can suspend recreational cast netting at a time different than commercial cast netting, at a time different than trawling, based on the data that we have, and that gives us the ability to minimize any negative impacts that might come from that fishery at a time when perhaps we had a winter freeze or some other type of condition. So we still retain maximum flexibility, and we just to remind the committee that we sample the shrimp population coastwide once a month, every month out of the year. So we are getting current information that we can apply to decision making.
And what would be the department's opinion on those changes that were made?
Those again are not contrary to good management of the shrimp resource.
Thank you. Any questions of Spud? Okay. Are there other speakers? I know. Okay. One question from Representative Burns.
One quick question. Remind me again how your efforts are going to be to monitor the resource so that you're able to protect the resource from over harvesting. Would you refresh me on that, please?
What we did is we went back and looked. Currently, the Georgia law prescribes the use of a count size, which is a number of shrimp with their head zone per pound as a benchmark for when we open and close state waters to power drawn trawls. The code does not specifically prescribe that to opening and closing waters to cast net harvest or beach seines or other types of gear, but we can certainly do that as a policy decision. We can use the 45 count size, and that will reflect whether these shrimp are mixing. And typically when cold water comes on, you see some mixing of small shrimp and large shrimp together. So that's a pretty good measure of when the shrimp population is probably becoming vulnerable to capture, in the deep holes, the area that's been of great concern. So if we use that as a benchmark, then that'll give us a good tool to make decisions that are risk averse when it comes to protecting the overwintering shrimp.
Mr. Long? And you feel like that's really an improvement on how you've been monitoring that resource in the past?
In the past, we have not, without the modified nets being there, we've not been as concerned about the possible negative impacts of cast netting. But now, with the modified net in there, we need to consider, a more, risk avoiding posture, and that's something that we will certainly do, is use that count size as our new threshold. And I have some information where we've gone back and historically looked at how that would affect when we opened and closed waters. And this year, for example, if we had used the 45 count size rule, the waters inside north of the Altamaha would have been closed in late December through January and February, and the water south of the Altamaha would have remained open. And that is just reflective of the difference in water temperature and shrimp behavior along Georgia's coast, that even though it's only 100 miles of coast, there can be a pretty dramatic difference between the southern extreme and the northern extreme.
And you feel like this is going the extra mile to?
I think so. I think that we're going to make sure that we have all the tools available to us to make a good decision to protect those overwintering shrimp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
One statement. I remember two things that we talked about when you were here before. One was the repealing of the limit on the size of the boat trawler boats. That law was repealed with this,
right.
This bill, right?
The 220-foot trawl limit.
Right.
Right.
Was that something that the committee, that was another item
Right.
the committee
Right.
adopted, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Or the stakeholder panel. And the other one was about the ability to dock at a dock that sold, I guess, bait shrimp.
Right. That'll be very important to all the different sectors, because as the coast of Georgia is changing and we're seeing traditional commercial docks disappear, commercial fishermen need the flexibility to land their catch at the facilities that continue to exist. And right now, a commercial shrimp harvester cannot land his catch at a marina where they sell live bait shrimp, and this bill will make that possible, which will be a benefit to trawler, cast netter, regardless of their means of capturing shrimp.
And did you see that in this bill?
Yes, that's in here.
I was looking through it just a second ago, and I remember seeing it in one of the bits we read, but I didn't see it in there. Any further questions from the committee members? Thank you, Spo. We
Thank you.
appreciate you being here today. Are there other people? I know Pam says she wants to comment. Are there any other speakers on this bill? Pam, would you like to come up and identify yourself? And this is Pam Davidson. Do you mind coming over? Yeah. Okay. Oh, was the table's in the way?
Hello, members of the committee. My name is Pam Davidson, and I'm the lobbyist for the Georgia Shrimp Association. And those of you that have heard me talk in committee know that it's my custom to tell a joke first, and I have no joke here. The fact is, this is a serious matter. And I'm going to ask for maybe more time than you want to give me this afternoon, and even more attention, because this is a matter that will affect people and families and their living. These are people that do this for a living. I want to say, first of all, that I'm very proud to represent the Georgia Shrimp Association. This is a group that's been through a lot. They've gone from 200 trawlers to 80. And what's left of them is a strong bunch, as I know some of you know. You know about the foreign import problem in our industry and our success in an ITC ruling at getting that stopped, the foreign dumping, foreign shrimp. And I know you also know about the price of fuel and how that's affected our industry, price of diesel. And I'm going to get back to those issues in a second and how they relate to this. Price of diesel, to fill a shrimp boat is 1,000 gallons. That's roughly $2,000 a week for your average shrimper, and that's relevant to this situation. Shrimp folks are extensively regulated, as you know, not only by the state government, but by the federal government.
Pam, can I stop you just a second? Because you said something a while ago that I don't think was right.
Okay.
I think you meant to say they were like 1,300 and something trawlers, and they're down to about 300 and something. Is that not correct?
No, I think it's we're down to about 80.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe.
Do I need to be corrected on that? Anybody? Licensed? Licensed.
That's the
Am I
commercial.
wrong?
Isn't that the commercial cast
There
nets
are
that we
80
have?
in Savannah, Georgia alone.
Commercial cast center is like 83.
Yeah, they're allowed 200.
How many trawlers?
Three something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Goodness sakes alive.
Yeah. Well, I thought.
Okay.
I think they were over. Wasn't they over 1,300 at one time?
There's
Oh, I'm sorry. That's our membership. I apologize.
Okay.
That's just in the Georgia Shrimp, and that's who I'm speaking for. I'm sorry. I got a head cold, too, on top of everything else today.
Well, I thought you was talking about the commercial.
I stand
cast
corrected.
nets.
Yes, I'm sorry. I misspoke. Okay, so,
But anyhow, move on.
but we're folks that are resilient, and we're moving on. As a matter of fact, those guys that are left and the families they represent have started a certification program. We have a huge certification booklet, and it's a very extensive process. And they've agreed to that program, and we're promoting a Wild Georgia Shrimp program to increase the price of shrimp. And we've invested a great deal, and there are some cast netters that are going to benefit from that, commercial cast netters. We were part of an 8-state effort, and we were really the leader in that effort. So anybody that tells you that the trawling industry is a dead industry, be careful. Be careful. Because, yes, while our numbers have dwindled, those that are left are planned to be here, and we've got a plan. I want you to keep some figures in mind when I talk. And the first figure is that the commercial trawlers are responsible for between 4 and 5 million pounds a year of shrimp. The commercial cast netters, and this is relevant to the economic arguments here, are estimated about 6,000 pounds per year. And the recreational folks, well, that's unmeasurable because, in essence, their numbers, we don't keep track of them. We can't keep track of them. They're recreational folks. This is a family-based, traditional way of life, and it's a hard life. It's a hard life, and it's gotten real harder. When I put forth my arguments today, I want to encourage you, first of all, to keep in mind the Hippocratic Oath, which people misquote all the time. When considering an action, at first, do no harm. And it's our position, the Georgia Shrimp Association, that nobody is actively harmed under current law. And in fact, the law takes the role of government to provide a balance between needs and situations and interests. What we wanted to propose to this bill, we got caught off guard a little bit, and things are going a little quicker than we'd like. But what we wanted to do is have an amendment, and the amendment goes like this. We're concerned about the sale of recreational shrimp, the uncontrolled sale of recreational shrimp. And so we thought it'd be a good idea. Roger Lane is representative in our Darien area, agreed to this, that we would make a provision that's been a part of Florida law for 15 years, and it works well there, and it was brought about because they had the same problem of the unknown sale of recreation shrimp in that state. And it's basically called, for lack of a better term, no sale provision. And so it requires that any person that wishes to sell shrimp on a commercial basis have what's called a saltwater product license. And that license has attached to it a number. And that number will become part of a manifest system. And between buyer and seller, buyer and seller, we'll know in the case of someone accused of carrying more than their limit before current law, more than 48 quarts, whether or not their intent is to sell that. And we'll be able to track where that shrimp came from. We think that this is a fair proposal. Everybody that I've passed it by, including the author, who's been very good to us and listened to us, and according to the chairman, who's been very good to us and listened to us, two very good people and personal friends of mine, friends of the Georgia Shrimp Association. The CCA has taken a position on the no sale. The DNR, I believe, I don't want to misquote you, Spud, are you here? Where are you? I don't believe that you folks support the commercial sale of recreationally caught shrimp. I don't think anybody does, and this is a mechanism whereby we can make sure that that doesn't occur. Absent that provision, we feel very, very frightened about this bill, very concerned about this bill. And let me just explain this in a way that I hope you can all understand. Certain folks have access to the sound. Everybody but us has access to the sound. And there's some good reasons for that. In fact, the Georgia Shrimp Association asked that they not be in the sounds for environmental reasons in the 80s, apparently. And that gives them an advantage, because what happens in the sound is that is like a shrimp nursery. And those shrimp, for lack of a better term, they grow up there. And then they eventually go out to sea where my folks can catch them. And so our concern is, quite frankly and very matter-of-factly, simply, is that if you modify the net, and that's what we're talking about here. Let's talk about recreational first. If you modify that net, then it will be a more efficient means whereby to catch that shrimp for the recreational fishermen. And that's okay. That's okay. We don't have a problem with that. It's a more efficient way. But what are the consequences of that? And our fear is that these holes that everybody's been talking about, where those shrimp go in and hide, that a boat can go over those holes and you can cast a cast net, it will sink down efficiently, and you can bring shrimp out at a faster rate. When you do that, and when the word gets out that that's allowable, that it's efficient, and folks, and I'm going to tackle this issue in a minute, think that they can get away with selling that they catch in an efficient manner, then I think we're going to have a problem with a lot of folks getting involved. We don't think now that we have a problem. We think most folks are good. Most folks throwing out the cast net are not going to sell it. We've had a few instances, but what happens if that circumstance changes and that word gets around? That's our fear. And then what happens to your trawler who's waiting for those shrimp to come out, waiting for them to come out to sea, who's spending this outrageous price, this is very relevant, for diesel, and who has to deal with the expenses involved in that industry, both the cost of doing business in a sense of the boat, etc., but also the marketing, etc., the certification, all that goes into that. They're convinced, and frankly, gentlemen, ladies, I'm convinced that they won't have much to catch in a bad year. In a good year, they might get by. But in a bad year, they're in trouble. And that's our fear. And I've heard what SPED has said. I've represented this organization for almost 2 years now. And I am not convinced that there's a real science to this. And in fact, not only can we not predict what's going to happen in the shrimp industry, and these are folks that live hand to mouth, guys. If you get the word out and the science comes in, we got months and months and months of people not having any income and spending the money on that diesel fuel without anything to eat, literally, or to catch. So how soon is that alarm going to sound? And I want you to be concerned about that, because I'm concerned about that. And we're talking about people, and we're going to talk about families, and we're going to talk about people that do it for a living. Now, you and I experience fuel costs, and we might gripe about them, but it's not our life. It's not our livelihood. And it has changed the life of the Georgia Shrimp Association and its members, those trawlers, deeply. I think God knows how many shrimp are going to come out. I think God knows. But I don't think the DNR knows, and I don't think anybody knows yet. And if they could, they couldn't do anything in time to stop it. I want to talk a little bit about the commercial provisions. We're less threatened, let me say this, by the commercial cast netters. And the reason is that you have a license limit there. If the word goes out, there's still so many licenses. Heaven forbid that ever change. Okay? But here, again, you have a situation whereby certain folks are allowed in the sound, with good reason, historically, and our folks are outside. You got the same situation. You've got folks, and here they're earning a living. I'm going to give you that. They're earning a living. They're important. They got families. But in an efficient way, they can go ahead and catch that shrimp. But they have one thing we don't have. Well, two things. They've got access before we have it. In a bad year, that could be everything. And number two, they don't have the fuel costs that we have. We've dragging a trawl, and they are casting a net, and it's dropping down in the water. They don't have the fuel costs that we have. And frankly, what's happening with the import situation is our issues is numbers, folks. When you're making less per pound, you got to bring more in. So if you hear nothing else I say, and I know it's late, and I appreciate your patience, hear this. There's a time for everything. I don't think this is the time. This is an unprecedented situation where we've been struck with these foreign imports, and it's an unprecedented situation where you have out-of-control diesel costs. There are many issues that we can address in this bill, but those are our main concerns. And in order to in the interest of time and in consideration for those you folks, that's all we really want to address. But I want to address one thing that's been said. Maybe you don't consider it important, but I do. The argument's been made, well, hey, it's a dying industry. It's a dying industry. So if it's dying out, well, what the heck? Let's kiss goodbye. And I have to say this, and I have to talk about this. First of all, as you know, it's not a dying industry, as I've told you. If you doubt that, come to me, and I'll convince you. But second of all, people are saying, well, listen, my God, you can't compete with the imports, so why don't you just stop doing it? Can I confront that issue head on for you folks? I'm a lobbyist. Regardless of what you think about that profession, I love what I do, and I'm very proud of how I do it. If somebody told me, listen, you can still get the politics, a little bit of the debate action, you can be an attorney instead, I wouldn't like that, because I believe in government. I believe in good government. And that wouldn't appeal to me. Likewise with the shrimp folks, and I want you to remember this, that the most efficient means of providing the consumer with shrimp, albeit an inferior product, perhaps sometimes an unsafe product, is foreign shrimp. What did that get us? Did that put any money into our pockets here? Did that create any economic development? Does that contribute to our culture or our well-being? I don't think so. Remember this, we'll be back. We will survive as an industry. But I don't want to be responsible. I have a great burden morally and professionally in this way for having ever hurt this industry. I want to be responsible for helping it in this time. And I know you do too. And I want to go on record, Bob Lane, for saying you are a compassionate, good leader, members of this committee, and so are you, Cicely. While we dislike the bill, we appreciate your open doors. And you have never turned down a conversation with me, Mr. Chairman, and I hope you never do. And we're going to make up. And what I've mentioned to these folks, and we may do, hopefully, is somewhere in this legislative process, perhaps on the up and up and honestly in front of each other, we can work this no-sale provision out. It's not a scary thing. It's not a bad thing for anybody. I haven't identified a loser yet. We're willing to swallow a lot of aspects of this bill, even though, frankly, we don't like anything about it. Even the things that you put in there that perhaps could help us, we have problems with. The increased net size, for example. We're concerned about that for several reasons. I'm going to go on record for asking you to prolong this, although I know you won't. But when the jury's out on this and the session is closed, and what we end up with is the final result, I hope we're not sorry. We may have to change the law back, what was a good law. But let me tell you this. Some folks in the meantime are going to be in a world of hurt. Let me talk a little bit quickly in closing about the issue of the law and how the law has worked and hasn't worked. The law, I said, was pretty good, but there is one minor flaw. The law says that you are not to, the recreational shrimper is not to sell shrimp on a commercial basis, but it happens. And as I said, it's going to increase. The reason it happens, according to a McIntosh County judge, and that's what the proof of the pudding, what happens in a court of law is something convictable. We know about enforcement based on the results in a courtroom. And this judge threw that ruling out. Bottom line, people can say whatever they want about the judge or the politics, or the local culture, or whatever they want. Proof is in the pudding, folks. He threw it out, and he threw it out in this basis. He said the law is unclear. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves and consider that the final. He's a judge, sworn-in judge of the state. So, in absence of enforceable provisions, we feel that this bill will hurt us. We continue to want to work with you, members of the committee, members of the General Assembly, and I will take your questions.
Good. Pam, we appreciate that passionate remarks that you had, and I know you believe in what you believe in, and we wouldn't do anything to. We value the commercial, the trawler industry and what they've meant to the state and the availability of shrimp we've had in the past, and we don't want to do anything to harm them. You know, what we've heard, though, from others is that it's not a resource problem, that there will be shrimp there. We've left it open so that the commissioner or DNR can close the season if there is a season that's where a disaster happens or a drought or whatever it might be. So I think we've left it open, but I do want to remind you too that this is just one leg of the process that this bill has to go through. And there's if you got some provisions, I hadn't heard any objections to making the penalties clearer for selling a recreational harvest. We've asked Legislative Council, I did, and Wayne, I don't want to quote you, but it is a law, a stated law, that it's against the law to sell recreational shrimp now. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Good. So we think there's a law in the books, and it's punishable by a misdemeanor, and that's up to $1,000 fine and up to a year in jail. Is that correct for a misdemeanor if it has no other? So you get to that. I mean, a judge can go from nothing to that. So right now, as it is, and if he's not enforcing that, then you know, I hate to say the judge isn't doing his job, but somebody's not. Apparently, it hadn't been a large enough problem for it, and if it becomes a problem as you think it might, then I think you would see more action on the judges in that. I think if they're to do their job, which they are, I think they will respond to it. So that's one choice. The other choice is it's got to go through the process. I think you told me y'all didn't have that quite ready to put in yet. You know that we're at the last hour just about as far as getting a bill out of committee and getting it through the process. So, you know, we're going to ask the committee what they want to do with it in a few minutes and see if, you know, what the pleasure of the committee is. But
Okay, sure.
before I do, is there anybody else, or is there any questions of Pam from the committee? Is there anybody else who wants to speak on this bill? Yes, sir. try to make it brief, because these people have had a long day, and,
Clarify how many pounds of shrimp you said. There was 4 to 5 million pounds by the trawlers, and how many pounds?
6,000 pounds. That's according to John Wallace of the Georgia Shrimp Association.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank y'all. I'll make it extremely brief. My name is Marvin Wilson. I'm with the Coastal Conservation Association. First of all, I'd like to thank the DNR for their exceptional scientific data and resources that they are using in determining the number of shrimp that we do have. The science is impeccable in what they're doing, and CCA is 100% behind this bill. That's basically all I have to say, and thank y'all for putting it up.
any questions, Pam, committee? No, sir. Thank you very much for coming. Anyone else like to speak? Any discussion among the committee? Anybody, any questions? You have Representative Burns.
Who's responsible for enforcing?
Who you address?
Excuse me, you, Mr. Chairman, I guess, and you direct it. It may be to DNR, to Spud or Dan, I guess. Who's responsible for enforcing the no sale provisions? Is that through the department? Would they have that responsibility if there were recreational sales? Is that? I'd like to know who enforces that.
Yeah, come to the.
Yes, sir, Representative Burns. The Department of Natural Resources has the responsibility of enforcing that code section, but there's also some responsibilities that fall on the Department of Agriculture because of the sales of seafood. So there are complementary, separate but complementary codes that address the sale of seafood. Ag is more concerned about human consumption and public safety, and we're concerned about resource conservation.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any further questions, committee? Does the committee have, does the committee want to take action on this bill? I recognize Representative Henson Moser.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that House Bill 1460 as amended, LC 254468 ERS, be given a due pass recommendation.
There's a recommendation that House Bill 1460 by committee substitute do pass. Is there a second? There's a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and we'll report it out with a due pass. Thank y'all for coming. The next bill that we will take up is House Bill 1489 by Representative Burns. You can stay on there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Proud to bring 1489 if I can find it. I got one right here. Thank you. Thought I could. Let me see it. This bill, and I'll I think had some really good folks help with this and have a great interest in wildlife in Georgia. And I'll thank Glenn Dowley now. Personally, I think he's around here someplace. Glenn, thank you for helping with it. And I appreciate the department's help with it. We've worked with this bill to make sure that we solved the problem in Georgia before it got to be a problem, I think. As we know, technology's changed the way we live and the way we enjoy life and many things about life, and it's been a blessing in many circumstances. But this is one case where it's really brought about a problem that I think is really a sad problem. But it is a concern that we have, and we've come up with this legislation to help prevent this problem in Georgia before it comes into existence. And this is computer-assisted remote hunting. I'm on 88. Excuse me.
1489 invitation to D&B Parks.
You did give me the right one. We won't do what we did in the House, so we'll get on the right one. We're on 89 now. Sorry about that.
We're looking after you. Just
Thank you very much.
You might need to get some help.
We might, but Glenn did help with this one also. We'll deal with, I guess, the first thing we do is deal with what cervid means for those of us who may not know. I didn't know, and that pertains to namely is another word for deer for those of you who don't know. And we have a concern. We've done a great job with the department in Georgia of keeping the health and safety of our wildlife herd, especially our deer herd, intact. And it's been a success story as far as our recreational hunters. And as far as bringing revenue to the state, it's been a great economic development tool. And it's something we must preserve. We know that there is a problem in other parts of the United States. And it's basically known as chronic wasting disease that has the potential to devastate a deer herd. It's a tremendous problem in cervids and other parts of the country. And we'd like to, this bill would take care of preventing the importation of any of those parts of cervids into Georgia, of deer into Georgia. And with this legislation, we feel like we could take care of that problem and not allow the potential for chronic wasting disease to be brought in our state. This one part of the bill we're working on is still a work in progress, I guess, so I'll ask to bring your attention to Section Section B, Line 1. It deals with the importation of a live cervid into the state. We're working on an amendment. I think we have that in place, and Mr. Chairman, if you would indulge me, I think council has a change on that line that we would ask him to read to us at this time. Would that be appropriate?
Yeah. Repeat what you said there.
It deals with Section B in line 21 that deals with the importation of a live deer, a live cervid into the state, and who would have the way the bill is currently in effect. It's doesn't allow any importation of a cervid, which is a deer or a hoofed animal, into the state, and we have some concerns about that. And we'd like to leave some of those controls to the department. And we've prepared some different wording there to deal with that. And
Have you got a copy of that? See. Okay, let's, all right, if you, let me turn you on one. Okay, can you tell us what the proposed language is?
It occurs in three places, Mr. Chairman. In the title on line 4, immediately before the phrase "to repeal conflicting laws," insert the phrase "to provide effective dates," semicolon. On line 22, immediately before the period at the end of that line, insert the following, comma, "except as otherwise authorized by rule or regulation of the board, in effect as of January 1, 2007, or such later date as may be provided by Code Section 27-1-38. And then on page 2, renumber Section 2 as Section 3 and insert a new Section 2 to read as follows. This act shall become effective on July 1, 2006 for purposes of promulgating rules and regulations, and on January 1, 2007 for all other purposes.
Okay. Now, will you tell me exactly what that means? That means that a person cannot bring a cervid or a part of a cervid into the state unless he has like a permit or something like that from the department or something?
It would authorize the department to establish rules and regs with the right exceptions.
Okay. Which could mean they were allowing it for one reason or another, somebody to bring something in.
Research or whatever.
Okay. All right.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That concludes you?
No, I want to go a
Okay.
little bit further because we're covering part of it that allows for those extenuating circumstances where it may be necessary. But we also wanted to make sure that we have hunters that leave this state and go to other states and hunt. And we also wanted to make sure that there's some, they were able to bring their meat back into the state. And we take care of that on page 2. They simply have to make sure that the meat has been, does not contain any bone, or that the spinal cord or the head portions are not included in those meats when they bring back. I think you'll see that Section 4 and then down 7 through 13 include all of those portions that would be included there.
So this would be, Okay, let me Representative Reese.
Is that-
Question.
Does that mean if you kill a deer in another state, and you have to have the head mounted in that state, that you cannot bring it back into Georgia to have it mounted?
Yes, you cannot bring the head intact back in state. It would have to be, the horns would have to be sawed and then cut off and you have to be skinned out. And you would have to skull. You would not be able to bring the inner portion of the skull back in the state, which would be the typical way you would do it. You're not allowed to bring the whole entire head back in as a one whole piece. But you would not be prohibited from bringing your animal back. You just have to follow these, as far as the trophy aspect of it, or the actual meat itself, you would still be allowed to bring it back. We're just taking these precautions, and this is where the chronic wasting disease is manifests itself in the bone and the spinal cord and the brain tissue. So that we're just taking precautions to make sure it doesn't come back in those parts of the animal.
And that's only from those states that have a documented case of cervix-infected chronic wasting disease. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And it's also allows for the commercial importation of meat that you use in restaurants, and they'd have to follow those same guidelines also, which I think they would currently do that anyway. Mr. Chairman, that's the bill along with the changes there on Section B that we brought in to take care of those extenuating circumstances when we need
Well,
to
let's
bring a
take,
live animal.
let's take the issue of the amendment up first. Any question before we do that at this point? All right, would you like to propose that we accept these amendments? Let's see where you.
Yes, I
I'd like to
would.
Make a motion.
Do I need to make that, put
Yeah,
that form?
yeah,
I'd like
yeah.
to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we accept the amendments as offered through Legislative Council to this bill.
And I think in the interest of time, since we're in the late hour of the session, if it's all right with the committee, do y'all, is there any objection to us doing it in this manner instead of having it printed and given to you? Okay, do I hear a second to that motion? Second. All right, got a motion and a second to accept the amendment that was read by our Legislative Councilman Wayne Allen. Any discussion on those amendments? All those in favor then will signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Okay, the amendment passed. Now getting back to the main question on the bill. Any discussion on that? Any questions or any discussion? Okay, does anybody in the audience have any comments on this bill? Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, thank you. My name is Glenn Dowling of the Georgia Wildlife Federation. We want to express on behalf of our 50,000 members and hunters and anglers in this state the hard work of Representative Burns. He is not only a quick study, he's a champion to all of us because in working with the Cattlemen's Association as well, they asked if there could be some more protections in disease prevention in this state. Although there's no validated CWD transfer over into the bovine herd, there are other diseases that might be brought into the state as well. And out of an abundance of caution, the Cattlemen's Association, if anyone of you have cattlemen in your district, they were interested in seeing this bill go through as well. So with that being said, we deeply appreciate Representative Burns' efforts on the behalf of the healthy deer herd in the state, the Cattlemen's Association, Georgia Wildlife Federation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Dowling? Thank you. Now, what's the pleasure of the committee? I'm recognizing the motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we do pass on the amended version of 1489.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We'll pass it out. We'll do pass House Bill 1489 as amended. By substitutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The next bill is House Bill 695, and I'll ask Representative Holt, who's the author of that bill, if he would present the bill. Hold on just a second. Let me back up because I think I need to. Hold on just one second. Let me back up just a second, Representative Hope, because we did take this bill up last year, as I remember. Was that last year that we had this bill, or was that earlier this year?
You heard it last year and then assigned it to
And signed it to a
subcommittee. Yes, sir.
subcommittee, and we need a report back from the subcommittee before I call on you. If you'll give Representative Burns, who was chairman of the subcommittee, you ran on House Bill 695 to make a report back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our subcommittee did duly meet yesterday with Representative Holt and several other interested parties, and heard some interesting facts on this bill. And this bill had been gone back and worked over with the Department of Ag and with the Department of Natural Resources and Representative Holt, and we came up with a workable bill that satisfied, I think, everyone concerned. And we met yesterday, and it was duly considered, and we the subcommittee gave it a due pass back to full committee.
Thank you, Representative Burns. Now, he has some handouts, I think, that he wanted to hand out before you began. But as he's doing that, if you want to get started, Representative Hope, and refresh us up on the bill and the changes that were made, we'll let you begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I do appreciate the chance to bring House Bill 695 before you again today. I'd also like to extend a special thank you to Subcommittee Chairman Representative Burns and to the folks from Agriculture and DNR for their hard work on improving and tightening up this bill. As I explained last year, I brought this bill in response to a constituent concern. A lady from my district, Helen Sterling, has been interested in receiving a placement of a capuchin monkey from an organization called Helping Hands. And I'm not going to regurgitate everything I told you about the situation last year, because I realize it's probably still fairly familiar considering the circumstances. I do want to thank Helen and her mom for taking the time and trouble to join us here at the Capitol today. I believe she will ask to testify. Now, even though the bill has been a work in progress during the course of the year, some opposition has popped up now at almost 1 minute before midnight, and that's the reason I've distributed the handouts, and I would like to please refer you to those, and they have my responses to the concerns expressed by the opponent of the bill. Now, beyond the specific and technical matter that we're dealing here with, which is, of course, licensing an additional species as a helper animal here in Georgia, I think we're dealing with some more basic issues. And the first of those is a simple freedom. The freedom to be at home, alone, independent. Something that we all take for granted, but that for folks in Helen's situation is a very much prized goal in many cases, not always available. And hand in hand with the desire for that freedom is the desire to retain as much personal responsibility as an individual can, and placement of a monkey would allow many folks to do that and experience that freedom, and also it would give the primary caregiver, who we know usually means a parent or a sibling or someone in the extended family, a lift of an awful lot of the burden of helping out, allowing that person to go on and deal with many of the cares and concerns of their own life. And, of course, lightening that burden would obviously save the family money, and I think would also help save Georgia critical health care dollars, which we all know are always in quite short supply. And so finally, considering the opposition, I'd just like to close by saying I think it sort of boils down to this. This Helping Hands organization has been around for 27 years. Now, in that time, if no one had been interested in the service they've been providing, or found that after they tried it out it was not valuable to them, I think they would have closed up shop and they wouldn't be around. Secondly, if in that 27 years Helping Hands had somehow greatly or drastically harmed someone, I'm sure that the organization would have been taken to court and probably put out of business. And maybe rightfully so if that kind of situation had happened, but it has not. And so the short of it is, Helping Hands after 27 years is still around, and that must mean that they're making a difference. So I will make this very short. Again, I thank you for your time in letting me present this bill, and I ask for your favorable considerations, and we'll be glad to try to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Good. Thank you, Representative Holt. Any questions of Representative Holt? Okay, Representative Reese.
Representative Holt, now I know dogs help blind people walk. Now, what exactly are the monkeys going to help people do? I just kind of skimmed over this real quick. I didn't.
Because they have hands, they can help with a lot of things like picking up a telephone or even positioning a straw in a drink, or just little tasks that a dog simply can't perform, but that a creature with hands can be trained to perform.
Thank you.
And as one of my responses points out, is only this one species, not any others of which there are some more significant problems that could well be encountered. But the bill is, as I said, very tightly crafted.
Representative Holt, do you have any idea how many of these monkeys they have trained, or do they have trained available, or can they have trained?
I apologize, sir. My hearing's a bit poor.
Do you have any idea how many monkeys is capuchin monkey? Is that what it is?
I believe that they say they have placed 106 since 1979, and over 90% of those placements have been successful. And one of the things they do when they have a placement, well, if it's unsuccessful, of course, they take the monkey back. And if there's a change in the status of the household where the primary caregiver is not available to help take care of the monkey and make sure it's, their proper cleanliness and it's taken care of, etc., again, Helping Hands policy is that they will take the monkey back. They're not going to be a situation where if someone has a monkey and the proper support abilities within the family or whatever support group disappear, that monkey just is allowed out into Georgia for someone to take as a pet.
Any other questions of Representative Holt? Ms. Sterling, did you want to testify today?
Yes, I would like to.
Okay, will you give us a minute where we can get a microphone over to you, because we are being broadcasted. If y'all will just pause for a minute, we'll have Gardner to take a microphone over to you.
Do I sound okay? Okay. I want to, though I'm new to this process, political process, I want to thank you for all the hard work that not only my Representative Holt, but also the subcommittee and this committee as well. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. First, I wanted, I guess, to speak a little bit about the personal impact. I know that Helping Hands has children's programs where they teach children about the importance of wearing helmets and safeties from spinal cord injuries, because in a perfect world, we wouldn't have them, or we would be able to cure them. And one of the things that they do with children is during the presentation, they asked the children to sit on their hands so that for a few minutes they could imagine what it's like to not have access to yours. And I thought that was such a brilliant idea. And I wish anyone who was making choices about someone who deals with paralysis and quadriplegia could spend 48 hours literally with their hands tied behind their back. Imagine what it's like to not be able to manage anything about yourself, to have full capacity of your brain. I mean, imagine your capacity as lawmakers. You have your brain, but if you couldn't get your brain to work every day, you couldn't do your job very well. And not only that, but the loss of dignity. To not be able to manage anything that goes in your body or out of your body. To not be able to manage your personal appearance. To completely have your social structure ripped out from under you. There are only 2 people in the state of Georgia who has known me outside of this chair, and that is my mother and brother, which is why I relocated here, because I could no longer care for myself. And so I deal with a lot of social isolation, because to hang out with me is high maintenance. You know, I can't just hang out and go to a restaurant with friends unless someone comes, picks me up, takes me there, and feeds me once I'm there. And that has a huge impact. You know, I went from being the reason people got together to no one wanting to get together with me. And I don't take that personally. It's just part of my reality. And the ability to not be able to, someone asked, what exactly can the monkey do? Specifically, in my position, the monkey would be trained to adjust my eyeglasses, to operate a remote control. One thing that people with quadriplegia deal with is you become very temperature sensitive. So to have a monkey that can turn the ceiling fan on and off, you know, constantly, which is oftentimes what I require, to give me a drink of water, to allow my mom to get away from me and go play some bridge, you know, and to have a life of her own. You know, it's not only the personal freedom it would allow me, but it's the freedom that it would allow my mom to not have to get up out of her chair, you know, 20 times a day because I'm thirsty, or because, you know, I need a blanket adjusted or something like that. But it's also the companionship. I want you to know that Helping Hands is an incredible organization. It cost over $35,000 to train these animals, and this is at no cost to me. They pay the vet bills for life, and if the monkey were to ever need medical attention or become really ill, they would fly that monkey immediately back to Boston. They also offer respite care for the monkeys when the monkeys themselves go into retirement. So Helping Hands, this is a lifelong relationship between me and the monkey and this organization. I can't say enough about this organization. They have visited my home. They have had dinner with us. They know very well my mom, myself, our dog, our cat, the layout of our home. They have done everything to make sure that this will be a successful placement. And all we need is for you to say yes. So unless you have other questions for me, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thurman. That's certainly a very positive testimony. Is there anybody anybody have any questions from the committee? Let me ask one question, because one concern I think the committee had early on with this was, you know, you've been in a handicapped situation, and I don't know in what frequency or how often one of these monkeys might, I don't know what the word is, turn on you instead of, or might become violent, and you not being able to protect yourself. Is that a concern that you have, or have they addressed that issue? Or
to me, it's the difference between reason and fear. And the way I would address that is, for example, the particular animal, monkey that's being currently trained for my situation is 14 years old. So it's a mature monkey. From the moment they are born from a captive zoo, they are placed in foster homes, spend the first 5 years there learning socialization skills, and and then they spend time at what they call monkey college for a couple of years where they learn about that. And I haven't had the monkey yet, but my answer is, dogs and cats can bite too. My dog and cat haven't bit me, but I mean, does the possibility exist? Perhaps. Is it minuscule? I would think so. Or I can't imagine that Helping Hands would still be in business. And the way I see it is, I think the public interest has to be protected. But what about my right? And if I'm willing to take that risk, then my mom's willing to take the risk. It's staying in my home, in my room, and I'm comfortable with it, then I don't see a huge issue.
The Lord knows we wouldn't think and would hope nothing would ever happen, but suppose they did, who would assume the liability if something bad did happen? I mean, do Helping Hands have some kind of agreement that they don't accept any liability? Or would somebody be, who would be liable in the event something awful did happen? Do you know that?
That is a question I guess I haven't considered. So, I mean, that just hasn't come up. So I don't know that I can answer that. But
I mean, would you assume that?
I don't think I would be going after Helping Hands myself. I don't think I'd be going after anyone because I think it's a choice I made. I feel like as an adult, it's like I said, like if it was my cat or dog, my cat or dog could do that. And I assume that choice when I decide to have a cat or dog. So, one, I don't see it happening. But two, if it did, I would consider that my choice.
I'm sure the ownership, I guess, would stay with Helping Hands, and I'm just trying to cover all the bases before.
Absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
This committee would be responsible for passing this bill out. And I want to make sure we know what we're doing before we do it.
Absolutely, and I think that's an important
Wayne,
consideration.
let me ask the legislative council: would you have any idea of what we're looking at here?
Mr. Chairman, I think part of that would depend on the contractual relationship between Helping Hands and the recipient. There's also a principle in law known as assumption of risk, and it could be that would bar any action by the recipient of the money.
Okay. Thank you. Is any further questions? Was there anybody else in the audience that wanted to speak on this with the Department of Agriculture? Or y'all? I know at first y'all had some concerns about it. Have those concerns been relieved, or would you like to speak on that? Yeah. Okay. Good. Give us just a second. Let's get the microphone back in place. You got a question?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sterling, for that testimony, and we appreciate it. Appreciate you making the effort to come down today also. I think that means a lot to what we're doing here.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I think line 27, page 2.
Cameron, will you
sorry.
tell who you are and who you represent?
I'm sorry. I'm Cameron Smoke, Assistant Commissioner in charge of Consumer Protection for the Georgia Department of Agriculture.
Thank you.
Sorry. Page 2, line 27. The last line there takes care of our concerns as far as health issues in the grocery stores. So that's been addressed.
Wait a minute. We don't have a line 27 on page 2. Have you got LC 149164?
No, sir.
It should be
What?
LC 149409S. I believe I delivered copies.
All right, I don't think the committee has this copy. Does somebody have one?
That
Well,
was,
go ahead and tell us what you.
okay, it states there in the substitute that under no circumstances may the monkey be present on the premises where food is sold.
What line was that?
27, page 2
Line
in the
27.
substitute.
Okay, I think we can share what we have, and maybe we can go forward. You have another one, Doug, that... Oh, okay. Line 27.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. That takes care of your concern.
That takes care
primarily?
of my situation.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Cameron. Any questions from Mr. Smoke? No, thank you. Does DNR, would you like to comment on the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name's Dan Forrester, and I'm the Director of Wildlife Resources Division. And we very much appreciate the representatives working with us on this bill. Our concerns initially were that it was much too broad with much greater potential impacts, and we have worked with them to address our concerns. The bill is fairly tight, but yet it does meet the needs that have been outlined here today. So we support the bill in its current form.
Thank you very much. Representative Hill.
I'd like to be recognized to make a motion that we accept this. Sorry.
Okay. Can I ask you to hold that motion? You want to speak on this bill? I would like to speak. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Carolyn Denise. I'm the president of the Humane Association of Georgia. We are a statewide coalition of humane societies, animal control units, and rescue groups. We've helped with many pieces of animal legislation, including those for canine therapy dogs and assistance dogs. And I do apologize for coming late to this process. I thought this bill was dead. I do have some information here from the CDC from 1997 when Doug Teeper first introduced this bill because a buddy of his wanted to wholesale monkeys into Georgia. And if you've not seen this 3 pages of why you might not want a primate in your home, I'd be very happy to share that information with you. If you've not seen it, I'd like for you to have copies of this. The reason why it's dated 1997 is because nothing has changed.
He'll hand it out for you if you'll go ahead and tell us basically what it does say and what your points you want to make.
Could I have that top one back? If you don't mind, the one that has the little writing on it? Anyway, I understood that this bill was dead. We have several concerns about the bill, mainly health things. The capuchin monkey, which if you're not used to it, it was a little monkey that they had on the Friends television show. The reason they no longer have the monkey on the show is because it would bite and throw feces, and which is generally what these animals do when they get angry. When you're training these animals, the first thing they do is pull all their teeth. Now, I did understand from Representative Holt that they no longer use electrical shock to train them, but used to they would insert, leads and then shock the animals when they were training them. I do want you to know that the American Society of Primatologists does not want any kind of assistance monkeys in homes. We don't want them for several reasons. Because they are so close to our species, the zoonotic diseases are very, very numerous. I thought I brought a copy of a recent article about a woman who was pregnant who had hepatitis B that she had from her monkey. They carry tuberculosis, herpes, influenza, polio virus, measles, and on, and you probably have it listed there in your CDC. I have a letter here from a veterinarian that's very concerned because, they've seen monkey attacks on non-handicapped people. So this really is quality of life, not only for, the person wanting the assistance, but also, for the monkey too. We also have some concerns about the camel's nose under the tent. Just last week there was a woman in Cobb County who was trying to bring her pet monkey into Georgia, and now she's going to be a breeder, which is the only reason that she can come right now, breeder or research. So she's going to become a breeder over in Cobb County. Curious George is out there. I mean, we know historically, anytime we have any kind of a movie that sensationalizes any animal, whether it's a Jack Russell Terrier or a spaniel in Lady and the Tramp, that we're going to have a spike in deaths to those animals. So Curious George, we're going to have a lot more pressure for these type of animals, to come into our state. Right now, we do not have the infrastructure, to do any type of regulations on these guide monkeys or whatever they are. We would really love to see some more technical help, or possibly, working with the canine assistance people, to try to gain independence. We all love and appreciate our independence and would want that for anyone. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from Ms. Denise? Okay, thank you very much. Representative Hope, I recognize you again.
Mr. Chairman, I thought you brought up a very good point with the discussion of liability, and I just wanted to let you know I would be very open to an amendment that would specify that under any contract for such a monkey to come into this state, that the state of Georgia be held immune from any liability. And that would be a requirement of being able to contract.
Okay, Representative Reese has a question.
Representative Holt, with the concerns that was just brought up in your research, what 90% success rate? Do you have any idea what the 10% failure rate was? What it was caused by?
In my handout, the organization Helping Hands had an independent organization do a survey of all the placements that they'd done, and the 10%. I guess we're talking about roughly 10 or 11 individual animals that were not successful. Were not because of aggressive or violent behavior, but because monkey aged, or if you look at the handout, there's several other reasons on there. I guess I should have my own handout with me. Yeah. But it's a response to one of the questions. In any case, all of the reasons were for things other than aggressive or violent behavior. I think one of the other key things was a change in the family situation where there was not a primary caregiver who could or would assume the maintenance for the animal.
Well, what about disease transmission? Is there any record of that in the monkeys?
They state that there has not been a single case of disease transmission since they started in 1979.
Yes, ma'am. Hold on just a second. Are you finished?
I'm sorry, sir?
Yeah,
you finished with your...
Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to allow you to speak, and we're not going to move the mic and see if we can hear you well enough.
I was going to say, as far as disease, I just want to put it in perspective that these animals are better cared for than a lot of humans I know. And this animal is living in my home. I rarely leave my home anymore. I'm rarely exposed. I can't tell you the last time I had a cold because I don't use my hands. And the only thing that gets to my mouth is the person preparing food for me. So the exposure that this monkey would have to any disease, I can't imagine.
And I'm sure they'd be treated and tested well before they ever placed in your home. So I'm on the question of the state's liability. Wayne, will you speak to that issue for us, please?
Mr. Chairman, the state already has sovereign immunity.
And that would relieve them from any liability they would have.
The state, yes, sir.
Did anybody else like to speak on this bill? Carolyn, just for a minute, just for a second.
One more comment that I forgot to mention. These animals cannot be toilet trained, so we're not really worried about the disease can go out. I mean, I hope the mother is still going out. I mean, if there is a disease that's latent there, it can be transmitted. And when they throw their feces, which is what they do when they get angry, that's another way to catch a disease. I will let you know that the last time that this got past us, we didn't realize the bill was up. It was passed unanimously in the House, and we stopped it in the Senate, and Senator Thomas will welcome that opportunity again. So we just really were trying to save some time. Thank you.
Well, you know, the Senate does have a lot more knowledge than we do sometimes, but you know, that's still a question that's to be answered, I think, on this issue. Anybody else care to speak? If not, is there any comments in the committee for Representative Hill?
I'd like to make the motion that we do pass 149409 substitute.
House Bill 695 substitute.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
The LC number.
Is there discussion on the committee? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Be passed out unanimously. Thank you very much. One more bill before y'all get up and leave.
Make them stay.
House Bill 1488 by Representative Burns.
And this one won't take long since I did half of it a while ago before you can stop me. Mr. Chairman, I'll have to say I'm not all to blame. Somebody switched, put 1489 before 1488. That's the only reason I did that. In my defense. Excuse me, I'll get to the bill.
Gardner, he's talking about you.
You did 1488.
This one?
Okay. If y'all give us just a minute, we'll, everybody got a copy of 1488, House Bill 1488. Ms. Sterling, again, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Representative Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this is the bill, and my apologies that I started halfway on a while ago and before I was reined back in and got on the correct bill. This bill, it deals with the hunting of animals with technology. As I stated earlier, that technology has brought many advances, and the vast majority of them are positive in our society, but there are a few that are negative, and this is one of them. Technology now allows us to sit at home at our computer and hunt wildlife and take back wildlife in another state or another part of the world with electronics. And it's something that I certainly don't agree with, and we need to get a handle on it before it arrives in Georgia. We're lucky that it's not here yet, and we want, with this bill, takes care of that issue. It prevents the computer-assisted remote hunting coming to Georgia, and it allows for punishment of the folks who would partake in that sport, in that pursuit, not sport. And it also allows for the folks who would set something up like that for their property, for them to be punished and their property to be compensated. It's a comprehensive bill. One of the questions that I had, Mr. Chairman, dealt with in the Part A of the bill, where it said it shall be unlawful to hunt any wildlife, and it went into had some concerns about recording or imitated calls. That portion of this bill deals with wild animals that are not indigenous to Georgia. So we're not dealing with, nothing in this bill changes in the language we have in 1488, changes the current law as it applies to animals such as baby crows or coyotes or something like that. That is already taken care of in the law. We're not doing one thing to affect that part of our regulations in Georgia. This regulation affects computerized hunting, and it affects wild animals that would not be indigenous to Georgia.
Excuse me for interrupting you. Will you take a minute to explain to the committee what that is?
Wild animals?
No, computerized hunting.
Certainly. I was pretty amazed by it, and I guess I can be pretty specific as to how it works. It appears that we can, when you come into work in the morning or while you're having your coffee, you could go online in another state and have a camera that's viewing an area that may be an area that whatever wild animal that you want to bag at that time would be coming into and approaching that area, and that you could zoom the camera in on that animal. You would have a view of the animal as it approached the area that would be in your shooting range, and then you're able to manipulate a gun and
With your mouse.
with your mouse, with your computer software, and actually sight in on the animal with the crosshairs, and then send a command to pull the trigger and fire the
You have to just click, don't you, on your mouse?
click it.
Sound like Mr. Chairman.
And, I wasn't going to be quite that specific, Mr. Chairman. I don't know about that. But, yes, you know I'm not a technology person, so I lose that technology about the terminology about mouse and all that other things. So the computer will actually fire the rifle or whatever type gun you're shooting with, and actually you can bag the deer, and then you can have it processed and shipped to your home, and put your mount on the wall, and you can be real proud of how you took your trophy, and certainly it's something that we're going to take care of and not allow to happen in Georgia. So any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, and appreciate.
Speakers on this bill? Any speakers? Mr. Dowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, the Georgia Wildlife Federation would like to thank Representative Burns for his efforts on this bill to prohibit computer-assisted hunting in the state of Georgia. We are following suit with 13 or 14 other states. I think there's more by now that have done the same thing in outlawing this horrible action. This is a statement on the efforts of Representative Burns is to uphold high ethical standards of hunting in this state, because this certainly is not that. A lot of people would say that this is simply click and kill shooting. This is not hunting. This is an insidious act of someone sitting in L.A., Miami, or Las Vegas, and off of a menu on their computer, be able to pick a wild animal. It could be an exotic goat, a sheep, an old circus animal, and simply line up crosshairs and click of the mouse, kill an animal without leaving the comfort of their condo. There was a website in Texas called liveshot.com, guy who started it out there. The immediate reaction in the hunting community was to outlaw this, and Texas has actually now outlawed that practice as well. But click and kill hunting is what we don't want here in Georgia, and we're deeply appreciative of the leadership Representative Burns gave to us. It almost removes hunt from hunting to the level of a simple video game. And as many of you know, video games nowadays, some of them are extremely violent, and to actually take the life of an animal by video is making an odd and peculiar connection with people and children, and we can't have that. The hunt is the sport of being there with the animal and respecting the animal, and we want to keep the hunt in hunting, and we appreciate this, and passage of this will send a clear message to the rest of the state and the country that we revile click and kill hunting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Dowling?
Oh, well, not him, no.
Okay, any questions? Bob?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Representative Burns, on page 1, sentence, line 16, at the end it says, "It shall be unlawful to use electronic communications equipment for the purpose of facilitating pursuit of any." Does that mean you can't use walkie-talkies, like if you were deer hunting, or that sounds kind of vague to me. Electronic communications equipment. I think that the spirit of that's like some sort of, I guess, collar or something. But it sounds like to me, I mean, how would you define electronic communications equipment? Is that talking like walkie-talkies amongst hunters?
Representative Reese, I'll tell you that wild animals in that thing, if you remember, that's only pertains to non-indigenous species in the state, and that would be like your lions or your tigers or some circus animal that was here, and I think what our goal is here is not allow any sort of hunting of those type animals here, but I will defer to DNR, which had a hand in helping us draft this legislation, if you don't mind, and help us.
No, it just says of any wild animal.
Two points, if I may. Again, my name's Dan Forrester, Director of Wildlife Resource Division. But first and foremost, this doesn't change the current status of the law. So folks are accustomed to what they can do and what they can't do. With respect to electronic calls, the focus is in the chase of the animal. Communications back and forth between hunters about locations and when they're going to meet for lunch and that kind of thing is certainly okay. But an instance that is, in fact, against the law would be using CB radios on a hunt where animals are being driven or chased by dogs. Let's say a dog deer hunting activity where you're saying, hey, we just saw the deer. It's a 4-point, drive around to such and such. That's actual participation of electronic devices in the actual hunt. So there is a line there that's drawn. But again, that language, as you see there, doesn't change what the current status is.
That's currently illegal to use walkie-talkies in a deer hunt or something?
Well, see, when you ask it that way, the question is, it depends on really what the intent of the communication is. And quite frankly, it's very difficult, something we don't spend a lot of time dealing with specifically. The whole intent is to secure fair chase ethic in the sport, and I think if you're in a helicopter communicating down to somebody by radio where the animal is, that's the type of activity that's prohibited.
But the language has not changed in this particular bill, right?
That is correct.
Other than adding the wild animal, which is something like a tiger, or a zebra, or a giraffe, or something like that, right?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Any further questions?
The question you asked me, this doesn't change the present
Speak
law.
into your microphone because
Dan, I'm trying to clarify this thing to make sure I'm right. This doesn't change from the present law.
That is correct. With respect to what is currently legal today concerning the pursuit of deer or any other game animal that we're accustomed to, it doesn't change any of the historical activities. It does, as was mentioned, add wild animals, which is not to be confused with wildlife, with game animal. It is a term that's used for those animals that aren't from around here, exotic animals that you might see in a zoo. Those are things that are classified wild animal, and there's a definition of those in the law.
Let me ask you one other question. Suppose one got out of the cage and they're out there hunting and not for sport.
If a wild animal got out of a cage, the department has the authority to dispatch of those animals in those kind of cases. But wild animals are actually possessed by an individual, so they are property. So someone other than that participating in an attempt to rid themselves of that, if there is claimed ownership, as you mentioned, getting out of a pen, then that would be a similar issue to somebody having a cow get out of their fence. And if someone wanted to take action against somebody that killed that animal, I guess they could certainly make the case. Whether they'd prevail or not, I don't know. But the department has clear authority to remove those type of animals. Of course, we try and catch those that we can, but in some cases, the only way to deal with them is to remove them lethally.
any further questions?
Ask for favorable consideration from the committee on this bill, Mr. Chair.
All right, do I have a motion? There's a motion from Representative Warren, and do I hear a second? That House Bill 1488 as amended. There is an amended bill that I don't think we have that. Okay. Let's restate that motion was as amended.
That was 1489.
Okay. There's a motion that House Bill 1488 do pass. And a second. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, same sign. House Bill 1488 will be passed, will be reported out due passed. That's it. We are adjourned.